Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Temi. I'm a graduate software developer working in the UK, and I make YouTube videos about coding, careers, and adulthood. Today I'm going to be giving you some motivation and study tips when learning how to code. Even as someone who works as a software developer myself, I still do struggle with keeping myself motivated when self-teaching outside of work. I will be giving you some tips on what I find helps me and some things I wish I did earlier on in my coding journey. Before I get into it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you'd like to see more content like this. Staying motivated when learning how to code can be quite tough and challenging, especially when there are so many coding languages, frameworks, and technologies out there. It's really easy to feel overwhelmed with the amount of options and fall into this trap of analysis paralysis where you're unable to progress because of information overload. Despite what everyone thinks, I personally believe that motivation is just the cherry on top when learning how to code, and I'll explain why. So motivation is quite fleeting as it can come and go, whereas discipline is something you continuously choose or you train yourself to do repeatedly. So when learning how to code, find your why and find what inspires you. For example, if you really love gaming and you're interested to find out how games are made, then I would advise you to pick up a book or start a beginner-friendly game development course. Or if you love Twitter or Instagram or Pinterest or whatever social media app it is, then I would advise you to find a beginner-friendly app development course. So go where your interests take you. So what I'm trying to say is that if you don't have a personal reason as to why you want to learn how to code, then you're not going to have that initial shove that's going to get the ball rolling in the first place. So if you pick something that's personal to you, that you know that I am passionate about gaming, or I am really interested in social media and I'd love to see how that works, then start from a place that really interests you. That way, whenever it gets tough, and you feel like you don't want to do it anymore, that you don't care, you have your why, you have something to go back to. So once you know what part of tech or coding really motivates and inspires you, then the key is building self-discipline and building a routine that will allow you to see it through and really progress with your journey. If you are a beginner coder, then you will have to put a lot of time and effort into learning and studying, as coding will be something out of the ordinary to you, and therefore it might not click as easy and you might find it a little difficult. As you repeatedly do it, it will get a little bit easier as it almost feels like secondhand nature to you. So my first studying or learning tip is to practice active-based learning. And this is a method of learning where you're really actively involved in your learning process. The first thing you should do is have some structure to your learning. So follow a book or a course to give you some structure. And I have actually done a video on how I kind of structured my learning when I was learning how to code. I'll put the tag up here or here, so make sure to check that out. And as you're going through your chosen resource, take notes or make diagrams if that's how you learn, but make these diagrams and notes in a way that you understand so that when you come back to it, they make sense to you. If you're following a tutorial, make sure you code along as well. This will help you retain what you're learning, but also if you can't keep up, just pause the video, rewind it, or even watch it at a slower speed. This is something I do a lot when following tutorials. I'll tend to watch the video at 0.75 speed or even slower than that, just so that I can keep up and really understand what the course instructor is teaching. Something else that you could do is project-based learning, but project-based learning without following along a tutorial. And this is something that I'm currently working on now. I'm currently building my own projects without following along a tutorial. And it is kind of scary and it can be quite difficult, but at the same time, it is a really good way for you to apply everything that you've learned. And building projects is just a really good thing to do because having good problem-solving skills is a really important part of being a programmer. And I know sometimes when people say build projects, it can be a bit abstract, especially if you're starting out on your own. But if you're unsure of where to start or you're unsure of what projects to build, what I do is you just Google front-end projects, back-end projects, or full-stack projects. If you are still feeling a bit lost and confused after Googling, have a look on my Instagram where I include project ideas and just things that are good to know when starting out learning how to code. Also, try and work on projects that do interest you. That way you're more likely to follow through and actually finish the projects. I know sometimes as developers, sometimes we get carried away with what we want to build and we get really excited, but either way, if you're working on things that interest you, then you're more likely to actually stick with it and finish it. So the next thing is something I actually read quite recently on a blog, and this is to train your mind the same way that you would train your body. So if you were going to the gym, I'm sure you would split up your days into lower body day, upper body days, cardio, and whatever the case might be. So the same way that you would do that, try and do a similar thing with your learning. So kind of spread your learning out over a period of time and try to focus on one topic at a time. So for example, on Mondays, you could dedicate that to learning about databases. On Wednesday, you could focus on APIs and microservices. Then on Fridays, maybe you could do web development. So it just really depends on you. I just think it's a really good idea to kind of compartmentalize what you are learning on certain topics. And also your brain can only handle so much at a time. So it's a good idea just to make it that much easier for yourself when you're studying. My next tip is to study or learn the things you find the hardest first. This is something I used to do a lot when studying for university final exams, and I cannot even tell you the difference that it makes. And this is because the things that you find the hardest obviously take a lot more effort. So if you decide to tackle that task first, so first thing in the morning, if that's when you like to study, it means that you have a lot longer to actually complete it. When you eventually do solve the problem, you'll be feeling really confident and just in higher spirits to do all the other things that you have to do next. When you've learned a new programming concept, it's important to make sure that you've actually understood and that you're not trying to memorize the information. And a good technique to use in order to make sure that you've understood is something called the Feynman technique, or commonly known as the explain it like I'm 5 years old concept. This will naturally help you break down a more complex topic into digestible and simple pieces of information. The idea is that if you can teach it to someone who knows nothing about programming or coding, then it's a really good indication that you've actually understood what you've been learning. So the way that you could do this is to first get out a pen and paper, write the technique down, and try to explain it in really simple terms, just in plain English. And also work through some examples and practice. And as you're writing your explanation, try and identify areas of weakness and areas that you believe that you don't actually understand. Go back to your explanation and try and pick out any complex terms that you used and try and break it down even more if you can into simple, digestible language. And as you're doing all of this, think about how would I explain it to a kid, or how would I explain it to someone who doesn't know anything about coding or programming. And the idea is that you just repeat this until you feel that you have mastered the technique or the idea. Lastly, learning the information is important, but remembering it is even more so. A good technique for remembering what you've learned is through a method called active recall. And this involves retrieving information from memory through testing yourself at every stage of your revision or studying process. So retrieving information from our brains then actually makes it easier to retain that information that we've learned. In the case of programming and coding, I would say the best way to do this is by doing coding challenges. And some really good websites to test yourself are Code Wars, HackerRank, LeetCode, and I think Free Code Camp also have questions that you could do when going through certain learning pathways. I will leave all these links and resources in the description box below. And if you are aware of any more that I haven't said yet, please leave them in the comments so other people can benefit and use them too. Another good technique for learning is spaced repetition. So by introducing time intervals between your study sessions, you can remember more even if you haven't actually spent that long studying. And this basically involves spacing out your learning. If you whiz through a coding course or even a book without actually reviewing and testing yourself, then you're a lot more likely to forget all the information that you've learned. By actively reviewing the coding and programming material that you've learned, you'll get better at long-term retention. The more you repeat something, the more you'll remember it. So it's like if you have a favorite song, the first time you hear it, obviously you're not going to know the lyrics. The second time, you might know a few words from the chorus, but after you've listened to that song on repeat for a while, you're gonna know all the lyrics off by heart. You're gonna know the tune, you're gonna know the melody, everything like that. And the best time to kind of review the information and review what you've learned is around the time you naturally forget it. So for example, if you are really comfortable with the concept of variables and arrays in a certain programming language, I would say maybe do that every week or so until you find that you no longer need to do that. Whereas if you find functions and scope a lot more difficult, then I would study that maybe every 3 or 4 days. So the idea is to repeat the process every so often until the concepts stick and you feel like you no longer need to review or revise the information every so often. To wrap up this video, motivation isn't the key when learning how to code. What's more important is being disciplined enough to come up with an effective, study or learning plan and being able to follow through with it. Make sure you are understanding what it is you're learning by breaking down complex topics into a lot more digestible pieces of information using the methods I mentioned earlier. Don't be afraid to test yourself. I do understand when learning something for the first time, it can be just really easy to race through it without stopping and thinking, hang on a minute, do I actually understand what I'm learning? I do get it, believe me. I'm still learning too, so I understand. Because at the end of the day, it really is counterproductive if you're spending a lot of time learning the information, but you actually don't understand it. Some of these study methods and techniques I already use, but a lot of them I don't, and I came across when researching. And I do see myself implementing a few into my study schedule. If you'd like me to make a video on how to produce effective study plans, then do let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this video useful, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up so you can see more from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.